So thank you people for coming and joining us this afternoon. This is a topic that that we think is quite important, and it can have a very solid long-term effect in terms of the number of girls, young girls going or not going into STEM. And this is something I personally feel quite deeply about. And so we are really happy to have two women here who are extremely accomplished professionally. Dr. Sandhya Kaushika is a neurobiologist at the IFR, and Dr. Preeti Ahalyam is a professor of chemical engineering at IIT Madras. I won't say much more about them because I've requested them to talk a bit more about the work they do and their journeys here itself. So welcome, Sandhya, Preeti. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here. So I think we'll get started right away. I'll hand it over to Sandhya. Yeah, maybe you can start about talking about how you what you do and what is the science that sort of drives you, and then how you got here, your own personal journeys, and whatever else you have prepared to say. I know. Go ahead, Sandhya.
Okay, thank you, Soumya and Radha and Vishnu and others for giving this opportunity.
Just one point, Sandhya, sorry. Would you like to turn your video on?
Oh, okay. Yes, sorry. I forgot about that. So thank you very much, Soumya, Radha and Vishnu and others for giving this opportunity. I will share a few slides of some of my thoughts and, as she said, my journey. And please don't hesitate to ask questions. I think we have a question-answer session at the end. So essentially, these are some musings that I have for people who are either high schoolers or more especially their family, because I think that's actually a pretty critical time for some of the career choices that young people in our country make. So my lab is in Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai, and I am a cellular neurobiologist. I have a small group of people who work under me, getting either research master's degree, a PhD, or doing postdoctoral fellowships. Essentially, I look at this little critter over here, which is called C. elegans, is a model system. And I look at how neurons within that function. So I'll just play this back again in terms of, so what I essentially look at is doing high-speed microscopy, genetics, and lots of interdisciplinary approaches to look at how material moves inside neurons and how that relates to function. I won't talk more about my science because that's not the purpose of this talk at all. But actually, I will talk about what was my journey, which is, relatively simple. I did an undergraduate in chemistry. I did a master's in biochemistry. I studied everything in a state university in the city where my family lived. It was called Maharaja Sayaji Rao University in Baroda. I had an opportunity to do summer training in CCMB when I was doing my master's. And that was the first time I was told that going abroad to the US to do a PhD would be a good thing. Hitherto, I had only thought about doing a PhD in India. My biggest dream was to get into Indian Institute of Science, but that was pretty pivotal moment. And then I went on to do a PhD at Brandeis University, and then I did a postdoctoral fellowship. I did actually a worldwide search for jobs in several countries, but after several job offers in different countries, I chose to come back to India. I had my first job in, again in TFR, but in the Bangalore NCBS campus, and then my second job is in the main campus in Mumbai. And essentially, I have studied different problems in biology as I have moved through things. I do work a lot collaboratively with people who work in different fields of science. And, I have sort of enjoyed the journey. So I actually wanted to, I'm not sure why okay, here it is. So these are some of my musings. And One thing which I want to tell all parents, and actually there are not that many young people here in terms of high school students, but even college students, one should not fear failure. I think if I have learned one thing in my career, sometimes, people sort of feel very upset that they don't get into medical school or they don't get into IITs or ICERs or, premier universities and whatever their eyes are. But really, I think it's much more important to be a little engine that could. That is, you look for ways to make the best of the opportunities that present themselves to you. And if you look at my journey, you will notice that there are no IITs in that journey or Harvard University or any of those places. What, in my experience, which is very important, is that you bring your full commitment, you bring your enthusiasm, and your desire to learn, grow, and do things. And that in turn opens doors for you to move forward. And I think that's an important lesson for young children to sort of take to heart so they don't feel crushed by failure. The other thing which is very important, I think, both as parents for high schoolers and people who are doing an undergrad, as well as for young people themselves, you do not need to know your mind right away. And maybe in high school, what you're interested in is in physics, or you think you're interested in maths, or you think you might like biology. You've read a few books, you might have seen little thing in Discovery Channel or heard someone talk about how cool solar coronas are, and then gotten all excited about it. And you might think that's the path you want, but you really don't know what that journey is. So I would say lead with your curiosity. That's a very key thing. And have a rewarding, develop a rewarding journey, which may not always be easy, but certainly will always be, sort of something which you enjoy at some level because you are learning new things. So I think these are some of my few musings that I sort of takeaways I have learned as I have progressed through my own career. For many young people, what is very clear is, sometimes they get trapped into thinking that there is only one kind of science career track because, even in science career tracks, the people who get sort of the most visibility are people who do research. Let's look at the pandemic. We hear about all these scientists discovering amazing things, or occasionally you hear about somebody who works in an industry like they did in Pune, putting together a kit at short order so that you can do testing. But those are the people who get a lot of visibility. Occasionally, people who are fantastic teachers, be they in primarily undergraduate institutions or colleges, get talked about. But there actually are multiple science associated careers. There is science communication, there's science journalism, which in the pandemic, both of these are things we have really depended on, including science illustration, to sort of explain the complexity of the various issues that we as the entire world, as humans in this world, are facing. But there are others. There's research management, there are writing and editing careers, there's being a patent lawyer. So science career tracks are many. They are all worthy of support. And you can go into these careers after sometimes an undergraduate in sciences, or a master's in sciences, or even after a PhD in sciences. So it's not as if there is only one path to go there. And I think that's very important for young people to know, appreciate, and embrace. Because if they don't do that, they sort of feel very trapped into one career path when they're very, very young. And instead, what I would like all of you as parents to recognize is that there really are many paths. One way to figure out what you would like to do is, as you start your undergrad or do your master's, do small internships locally. Ask yourself if you like the work. Ask yourself if you see yourself doing this, say 5 years from now, and then accordingly readjust. And I think that's very important for parents to give support for these exploratory phases in one's life. I'm now going to come into what are the central parts of what I think women in science often face. And this is from a very prominent scientist who many of us have, of course, course, probably are aware of, given the time, where Soumya Swaminathan says, she never felt she was treated differently as a girl or woman. Perhaps it was unusual. But when she went further along in her career, she felt as if she was being talked down or made fun of. And oh dear. I then put out, after I got invited for this, I just put out on Twitter, if asking young people, what is it that they would like to share? And I shared some portion of what they put up in response to this tweet. And some of this is underlined. What are the things that they heard? What about your job? Itna kyun padna hai? Why are you studying so far from home? Okay. And, some other person says you're encouraged up to your master's to study, but beyond that, everything is influenced by family and the pressure to get married. Here is another young person who said, who will marry you? And also talks about the value of supportive mentors who also decide your trajectories. So I urge you to go to Twitter to my handle for more responses and a few more tweets and responses to these tweets. So I think you get a sense of what some of the young women in their 20s are feeling and thinking about their journey. But I think it would be reasonable to say early on in just entering an undergrad or master's program, the barriers are not tremendously high, but they slowly become steeper as you go into your PhD and through your career. Here is another one from Shobhana Narasimhan's talk, which she gave recently in an ASSET colloquium in TFR. And these are examples taken from this very lovely book called Leelavati's Daughters, which was written some time ago. And you see the same theme of marriage and, tension within the family of the girls settling down. And, after you have children, how will you sort of devote yourself to something which takes up a lot of time, right? And these are very real issues that both parents and young girls do think about as they go through their career. And it's not something to say it's not a problem. It's something to address, discuss, and solve, and it is solvable. Okay. So I'm going to briefly summarize some of the difficulties that women in science face. But I want to say that even though I've phrased it as women in science, these are really difficulties that people who have careers, women who have careers face, right? One is you have an isolation, both in your peer group. So sometimes you can be the only woman in the room or one or two women in the room, both inside and outside the profession. If you have chosen a particular path, it's not as if there might be a lot of people or a lot of friends from high school who will be doing similar things that you can talk to. And so you might feel a sense of isolation. Balancing work and family always has challenges for both men and women, but particularly for women because they take up a lot more caregiving roles frequently. For some career tracks in science, particularly research-oriented academic ones, the training period is extremely long and can, sort of really you need to be what I call a marathoner to, go past that, and you need really supportive environments. There is, of course, bias and can have a hostile workplace. There's lack of recognition, which often comes, and then there's frank harassment. But the good part, and I really see this as a good part, is things have really started changing over the past 20 years. And particularly in the past 5 or 6, these issues are being widely discussed and changes are happening, which is a wonderful thing, right? But nonetheless, some remnants of this are going to continue to be there, especially as you reach the upper echelons of the profession. Okay, and I finally come to my last but one slide, and I want to emphasize, I can't emphasize enough families and how they are central to how women navigate their careers. And I don't say this lightly. I think it's exceptionally important for families to recognize that the role they play. First and foremost, the formative years are extremely important for developing a sense of self-worth. That, their views count, their ideas count. They should feel free to express themselves. and to have a stake and say in how their life is constructed for themselves. As parents of children who may be interested in science, it's very important to nurture their interests. I will suggest one forum which now occurs online, Chai and Why, which is an outreach forum which has been going on for over 10 years, run by scientists at TIFR Mumbai, where you have lots of events. They're all streamed live on Facebook, so there's a whole history of them, I think, going back 10 years for these. So you have all the videos to watch, or various scientists talking about their work they do or other issues, science itself in a very accessible manner. There's Scientific American, and something which you can always encourage is doing small home experiments. In fact, as I was growing up, that was fantastic. I don't know how many buttons of my poor mom and things I have spoiled, and she never sent two also. I've done dissections of animals on our dining table. So, that was very nice. And, so I think there are many ways to support people. There are a lot of resources, and we can discuss these later. I think it's very important to let young people find their own path. Sometimes it will be slow. Sometimes it may not happen even in their late 20s or early 30s. But I think as family members, that's what you want to nurture, to allow young people to find ways to match themselves to the right kind of environment, the right kind of career trajectory, and to have fulfilling life. Please don't, and I would say this applies for everybody, it applies for people who mentor young people in the lab, and certainly for parents. You cannot impose a life or career plan. In fact, I want to say that this sentence, this little drafting, is actually given by my older daughter who's now in college. She said, Amma, you need to add that. So I think that's very important. But side by side with all of this, I want to say that resilience and flexibility help. And therefore, how they navigate small failures early in life is very important. And here, I think both support and encouragement to walk through that failure instead of being crushed by it is very important. All careers, when you go through, there will be some setbacks, and it's how you face those setbacks which finally allow you to sort of go ahead. I want to also say that support is not needed only in high school, college. Say, okay, beta, do well, we'll help you, you're gone, next. No, I think in fact, this sort of support, be it emotional or be it in terms of financial or sometimes even physical help, is something that might be needed repeatedly at critical junctures, especially if they choose to have a family. I think those kinds of support is something young people should be able to count on with their families if the health and financial resources permit. And I think it really makes a difference. I want to add one thing. Always nurture in girl children zero tolerance for any sort of harassment, particularly sexual harassment. Many institutions have means to address this, but I think often young people still feel, especially young girls, even in their 20s, and I say this as being convener for Women's Health for some time, are very hesitant to come forward. And I think this is something we need to build into our girls. Zero tolerance for any sort of harassment. We should not accept it, and we need to develop the confidence in young girls to not fall into that. And I think as parents also, we should not fall into the next step, which is the superwoman trap. My beti itni achhi hai, she does this and that, and she raises great kids. It's not a requirement to be a superwoman. Let them be who they are. We are not singing the praises of a guy who does this, that, and the other. We accept them as they are, our sons and male relatives and husbands. Let's accept some people will want to do all of them, will do all of them equally all the time, some not so, and some may choose to do only 2 things out of the 5, which is your dream list. But also with all of this, all of us know young men. We might have sons and daughters. I think it's very important to also prepare boys for the education and workplace, which is going to be more equal and more egalitarian. It goes hand in hand. And I think this is a very important lesson. You cannot, just as you need men in the room when you're discussing equality, you need boys in the room when you're thinking about girls and careers and things of that nature. because these are cohorts of people who are going to come into adulthood around the same time, are going to be navigating and competing for the same jobs. Respectful behavior and knowing that you can claim that and demand it, but also that you must give it, is part of education for both sexes and all genders. Okay. Finally, I want to end. This is the logo that was made by a student in my lab who went on after very good research masters to an illustration, etc. career and works in the Bangalore Science Gallery. And I like to show this because I have had students who have decided to pursue alternate careers, or I wouldn't even say alternate, careers in science which are not associated directly with research. So I want to end by saying that her dreams should be your dreams, but your dreams may not be your daughters. And really, as parents, we have to let your daughters, your nieces, your students find and follow their own dreams. I'll end here. Thank you.
I think that was lovely, Sandhya. Thank you so much. That was really heartfelt and inspiring. And yeah, Preeti, I will hand it over to you. I know we're running a little bit over our normal timeline, but I think this is too good to worry about the timeline now. So Preeti, yeah, please feel free. Yeah, we'll
sure.
Thank you, people. Yeah, thanks that you're sharing your comments and questions. Please continue to do so. We will address them once Preeti is through with her presentation. Yeah, Preeti, on to you.
I'll try and keep it
it's all right. Yeah.
Okay, so I have, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, so this slide is a little bit about me and, my influences over the past 46 years of my life. In the bottom left, there's a little image. Does anyone know what that place is?
Mysore Palace.
Palace. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where
Mysore
I was,
Palace.
Yes, absolutely. It's the Mysore Palace. Born, brought up in that little, town with so many gulmohar trees and so on. I had a lovely time growing up. I'm from an academic family. Lots of my family are teachers. Dad was a chemistry professor. My mom used to teach language and linguistics at the university. So, that's sort of was always there in my blood. And I always mention it because I think that has influenced me a lot in the paths that I have taken. The next photo, I know at least 2-3 people on this call will recognize this place. That is where I went for college. This is, of course, the IIT Madras campus. I think it's from a few years ago. Looks a little bit different at this point of time. I did my PhD abroad at a place called Amherst, which is a little college town near Boston. And then I was at MIT for a postdoctoral stint, just dabbling a little more deeper in research for several years. I've switched the photos. My UMass, University of Massachusetts, Amherst, the building where the chemical engineering was located is on the right bottom here with the little clock on it. Every time I look at this, I have such fond memories of... just coming down these stairs where you see the small set of stairs, coming down and rushing into the canteen as if without that caffeine shot, life cannot go on. I've pretty much been in a university my entire life. Every single, day, I think I have been to college or been among people who are studying. So very ingrained in that. But I also have lots of hobbies and lots of interests, which my parents used to be really alarmed at the number of things that I would try to get into through school and college, and in fact, even now as well. Left on top is me. Sandhya was talking about being a marathoner in a different context. But I am one in the running lots of miles or kilometers context, actually. So that's me at the Mumbai Marathon a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4, possibly 5 years ago. I've always enjoyed running. In Mysore, lots of people are into sports, and I was definitely one of them. I used to play, I am only 5 feet 1 inch tall, but I used to play a lot of basketball as well for a very long time, although I've stepped out of that now because of old age. I also love reading a lot. And I mentioned this, because I want to convey that it is possible to have all of these other interests, love Calvin, love the humor in, a little bit offbeat humor that, Bill Watterson portrays over here, love reading, the writing, and all that type of activities as well. I'm very bad at singing, but I do love music of all kinds, and I listen a lot to even new, the type of music that our teenage children listen to. I listen to that as well. In all of these, what I sort of have a common thread of is passion. And that's the same thing that I bring into, the stuff that I have chosen to do at work as well. My research is in very core chemical engineering topics, extremely male dominated. Definitely, I work with coal. I look at catalysts. More recently, we're looking at production of various chemicals, including methanol, as a way to mitigate some of the effects of climate change and so on. And on teaching, I teach math. I teach about chemical reactors and lots and lots of chemistry reactions and catalysts and so on. Recently, I also started a little bit of activity in game-based learning at IIT Madras. Love the place because of this reason, that it allows me to do all of these things. And we have actually a course that our undergrads take up, where we sit around and we develop little games that can be used in the classroom, in IIT classrooms, for making learning more fun and less of a pressure, and actually more natural is the way I would like to convey it. So this is about me.
Preeti, can I interrupt for a minute? Your video seems to be off.
My video is off. Yeah, it's possible. One second. I don't think. Yep, it is off. Should be all right.
Okay, fine.
You can see me now? No?
Yes, yes.
No.
Yes, now I can.
Yeah, I don't know why it went off. Okay, so now I want to ask you a question, because it's a lot about me that I have shared. And I've given you a little bit of context. I want you to close your eyes and visualize a creative person and describe them here. How will what you say reflect on my screen? You will describe at this website, www.menti.com, and use the code 6298825. Soumya, if you don't mind, if you can type this URL and the code into the chat box.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of an exercise for you participants. And tell me what you come up with when you think of a creative person. Okay, that's a nice one.
So each person is allowed to enter one thing, or?
No, I hope I've set it up that you can enter more than once.
Okay.
There are some funny ones there. I don't know if you're seriously saying this. Okay, I will take it from here. Hopefully you had fun closing your eyes and visualizing this. I like some of these things like hippie and not scared of new things, humane. Artsy. I want to take up these handful of things that are said, that is about being dreamy, and the person or the thing that says artsy/artistic. And just these to start with, and maybe also hippie while at it. So I want to take up these three things, and I want to, talk a little bit about how frequently when in our formative years, we're sort of immediately bucketed into two separate slots, right?
Preeti, sorry, again, your video is off, because it would be nice to see you talking these things.
Okay, I'm going to maybe stop sharing then.
Is that the issue? Okay.
I don't know why my video.
Now we can see you.
Okay, you can see my screen as well.
It says you're sharing screen. I don't see your.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think there is some choice to be made there. That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, I'll come back to my face in a little bit. I want to just keep it on this slide.
Sure.
I think it's because I'm on an iPad. It doesn't like to have both, but that's okay. Yeah. So, so the reason why I asked you this question is because I believe that at a young age, we sort of slot children and say that here's a dreamy, artistic type of person, and here's a person who's good at math and science. Now, most of the time, there is no real reason why this type of slotting has to be gendered. There's no real basis for saying that, you know, the boys are good at math and science and the girls are better at, you know, drawing or, I don't know, dreaming or being creative and so on. So I feel like this is an important issue that especially in Indian society doesn't get addressed as much. Scientists or people in STEM are also creative people and vice versa as well. Just because a person is dreamy doesn't mean that this person is not going to be good at science. We have enough stories. Some of them are probably not true, but we have enough stories of scientists coming across a major breakthrough, you know, when they were in that dreamy state, not really slogging it out in their lab, when they were chilling and dreaming about things. We have enough stories of those as well. To me, allowing this free rein to your own creativity, wherever it finds expression, is at the core of what makes you a satisfied person. And I think that this is important as parents for us to be able to inculcate in our children as well. We are, I think our attempt could be to not suppress the creativity, despite, I do understand that there's a social context around it. There are all these forces, but our attempt should be to not suppress it, but to also harness it. Like Sandhya was showing us the, you know, the video and the little worm logo and all that. This is a, you know, this comes together with some sort of scientific accuracy and obviously an ability with drawing and what is typically considered pure creativity in some sense. At the bottom of all this is the fact that none of these things should be considered gendered. So if we can equally encourage our younger generation, irrespective of gender, to explore what makes them happy, what gives them satisfaction, at the core usually is going to be some sort of creativity involved. In my view, that is going to really shake things up a lot and build a more robust system for the future. I have a last slide over here. Quick question. I mean, I don't have a time limit on this, but just this is on a slightly different track to talk about exams, because everybody's imagination is captured by these entrance exams, school board exams. 10th exam is the most important. 12th is the most important. Won't lie to you, I have a child in the 12th standard currently, and it feels like the pressure is even on me regarding these exams. So tell me, what do you think is important? You have to rank order these things. I have just picked 4 things from my brain: good night sleep, revision of the syllabus, confidence in oneself, being attentive in class. So if you had to sort of rank order these things for exams, where would you put them? Okay, I have 2 people. You'll also notice on the screen that it adjusts, I mean, it gives weights to each of the answers you give and reorders itself. And I know I'll slowly converge to the correct answer that I'm looking for over here. All right, so I'm going to capture this screen, stopping your broadcast and coming back. My video is still there. Okay, so as you saw, most of us voted for the importance of a deep confidence in oneself in performing well in the exam. Of course, a good night's sleep doesn't hurt. Having studied the syllabus very well is not going to hurt you when it comes to performing in exams. But the most important thing really is that you have to believe that, this is an exam I need to write. This is an exam that I need to do well in. Now, in my view, exams and evaluations as we have them right now suck. I mean, I know that I'm standing here from IIT Madras and saying this, but I cannot, in all honesty, deny that exams in all forms across the board, the way they are right now, are really pathetic, and they really don't contribute, in my view, to the learning process like they should. If I was in my own utopia where I was, president of the universe or whatever it is, I like exams. I have always done well in exams. I've always enjoyed writing exams. I've gone into an exam always saying, this is the most fun I'm going to have today. I know that's going to make you want to hate me a little bit. That's okay. I can accept that. But for me, if I was that president of the universe, I would treat as a teacher, I would treat the exam as just another learning opportunity. So I would set the exam in such a way that you use your creativity, you bring it to the fore, you bring your background knowledge, whatever you've studied, learned at various levels, in terms of whether I have no problem with memorization. I think it's important, also a little bit of a sign of intelligence. So your memorization, your analytical ability, your ability to sort of recognize patterns, bring all of that in, but learn a little bit beyond what you had gotten to the night before the exam. That's the way that I would give exams to people. But that's not, I'm not the president of the universe. So we have the exams as they are right now. And we have to do better. The exams are very much gendered at this point of time, especially in India. It feels, some of the exams, it feels like, there is a definite tilt towards a type of aggression that is needed, which is either we suppress it in our girls, or it's just there is a difference in nature between men and women. And so there is a, that slight difference that changes the way they perform in some of the exams. So I really think that if we can remove the pressure of this type of exam, if we can even redefine what it means to be successful in an exam, if the learning component from the exam was brought to the forefront, it would be great. So these were the three things I wanted to convey to you, that, you know, what is me, what is Preeti, to the stuff about creativity and my very strong viewpoint about exams. And I will leave it to you, Soumya, to lead the Q&A.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Preeti. Great. There are a couple of questions here. There's one interesting one, which we had also talked about a little bit. It says, why prepare boys for work and educational place only? Why not for the home front? That is one question also. But we also had part of our conversation about how, you know, just as we are talking about preparing young girls, school girls, for to look at themselves sort of in a positive way as being part of STEM, how can one help boys make this switch and make it respectful and normal to work professionally and respectfully alongside girls and women? Yeah, I mean, either of you can go first. Yeah, Sandhya, sure. Yeah.
So I think, which is very important in, I mean, is to...
Your video is off, Sandhya, sorry.
Oh, sorry. There are two arms to this. One is the cultural arm, that, you know, even though whatever your culture within the home might be, but the overall culture of the society and the way popular culture discusses the role of women needs to be actively resisted. So you may partake of those as entertainment, you may see that as news, but anytime you see those things, is an opportunity to discuss that, oh, you know, we enjoyed this movie and we saw all of this stuff, but, you know, when you have a real relationship, I think you should approach this differently. I think it's very important to respect no is a no. When you speak to a person, don't make assumptions. I mean, and when I see this, this is not only for other genders. There are many minorities of multiple kinds. There are people for whom English is a huge problem because they've not been exposed to it. There are people who come from weaker socioeconomic backgrounds. So I think that sort of inclusive spirit, where you are aware of how you're interacting in the world, is something that people can be, you know, it can be part of conversations early on. And sometimes, you know, if you get it right, young people will turn around themselves and say that, you know, they will call out what they think you might have made an inappropriate jest, a comment in jest, and they may turn around and say, you know, you really shouldn't be saying that. Likewise, if you are training young people in a classroom, I'm sure Preeti can speak to that much better, but also in like labs like mine, where there's a lot of close, intense interaction, anytime there is, you see this tension, I think as a person who leads that effort, you need to step in, dissect the issues at hand, and draw clear boundaries of what is acceptable and what's not. But really, without a conversation and repeated conversation, you know, when you tell people jhoot mat bolo, don't tell a lie, unless you tell people the nitty-gritties of how to navigate why lies of omission, lies of commission, what is the difference, and, you know, for any ethical discussion, be it of copying, be it of discussions of equality, conversations, and, you know, discussing these things well in advance of when you need the skills is very important. And I think that's why families are so important. Smita said the right thing over there. It was missing in my slide. It's insufficient to prepare boys only for the workplace and education. They also have to be prepared for a different world in the home environment. And that's something which was missing from my slide, but she's very right.
Thanks,
Soumya,
Sandhya. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so my view is, I mean, I completely agree with Sandhya, and I also want to reiterate the point on zero tolerance for harassment.
Yes.
And supposition of innocence or ignorance is not enough. I mean, we are in the information, whatever, lots of information is there everywhere. There's no excuse for somebody saying, oh, I didn't realize that just whistling at a person could be called harassment. It can be called harassment, and it is. We have removed the words eve teasing from our lexicon and said, don't trivialize it by calling it eve teasing. It is sexual harassment. And we have a zero tolerance policy for this. Of course, at my workplace, that's the statement we make. But as individuals, also, we should have zero tolerance for this towards both men and women. You know, as a man or a woman, we should be very intolerant of that. But even not getting into that extreme, right? Somewhere, if you pedal back a little bit, right? My view is that we need to visualize a future that is different. Maybe each of us has to sit down and visualize for ourselves. I mean, we used to dream, right? What our future is going to look like. I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be all experiments and stuff like that, and so on. Some of it becomes true, not all, but in that dream, in that visualization for the future, whether we are men or women, we have to see a more inclusive, across the board inclusive, not just gender, more inclusive, more fair workplace. And these are stories that, I also like storytelling. So these are stories that we need to be telling to each other and definitely to our younger people.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm just trying to see if there are any other questions. I had one other point that I want to get your opinions on, which is that I mean, some part of being a woman in STEM, some challenges of being a part of women in STEM, I feel are fairly culture specific. And there are some that are not, that are there, world over. It's you can read about it everywhere. So since both of you have worked and studied all over the place, I was wondering whether you have a take on it. What would you like to share on that?
So I've been in an extremely male-dominated environment, both here and abroad. We'd be really countable number of women. It was a little bit better in the US because chemical engineering was, from an environmental viewpoint, was a little bit popular for women. But really, like a core engineering field, the numbers were very small. And I didn't see any big difference in the type of way the workplaces were structured. Okay. Was there sort of casual sexism there? Very much similar to here? I would say yes. I think that's been my experience.
Sandhya, would you want to add to that? Or?
I think the expectations in India for young women are still that a vast majority of them, people feel that, and I think that was what came out in the Twitter responses, that when I put out the question, is the expectation that you will get married by a certain age, have kids, and you will settle down. I'll paraphrase a comedian whom I sometimes listen to on YouTube called KK. He said, settle down. Am I dust to settle down, right? And so I think that we need to rethink the kind of life that young people have. And I think that conversation needs to change. I personally think things have changed from 25 years ago. I wish it had been faster. I think the pace is faster now, but it's never going to be fast enough, right? Everything should have been done day before yesterday at the very least, if not a century ago. I think this cultural context that you must achieve certain milestones in your personal life at a certain age is something that I feel might be slightly stronger pressure in India than compared to, say, the US or the West in general. And that can be, I've had a lot of female students in my lab, and I sort of see them have that pressure. My answer to this has always been, have clarity, even if the clarity is just local as to what you want to do for the next 3 years in your life. Communicate your desires and choices to your family early. They are, if you get it right, and if they get it right, both ways, your biggest cheerleaders. And, sort of tell them and keep them part of the journey, so they are there cheerleading you, supporting you as you navigate what might be extremely difficult choices for you. You yourself might have seen. I also saw this when I used to oversee the NCBS creche for many, many years. I sort of trained the staff, and the people would come and bring their young mothers often want to recreate their own childhood, but their lives have changed and they have to now navigate a whole new space, right? And I always feel that this is the time when families should not put pressure. Because if they in turn add to the burden of what are expectations of, this is the way your life should be, this is the way you should be a mother, this is the way, I expect you to do, I don't expect you to travel, drop off the hat, how can you miss your daughter's birthday party and not organize it? These are the kinds of things which I think if you step back and say, does it really need to be like that? I think it would be much better. And I sort of feel that it's really nice in India that families are close-knit and support each other. But I think just as with mentoring, when you are mentoring a PhD student, likewise for a parent, there are boundaries and you should recognize them yourself. You're the adult in the relationship. You have to recognize those boundaries.
Yeah, Preeti, you wanted to share something else?
No, I saw a question there that asked about, there is, like I said a little bit about the creative person is not expected to be a scientist. There's something about appearance, and, it's so true. So I thought that if you pay attention to how you look, that means you're taking something away from your science. And I genuinely believed that. And it's so not true. I mean, it's you have to be you. If you like, dressing up a certain way, or if you're not like me and you like to straighten your curly hair, you should. I mean, we are human beings and we're here for a short while on this earth, and it should be fun and enjoyable. So it's so wrong. And I hope that we have a way of telling at least our children and grandchildren that doesn't matter. You look the way you feel like, and that doesn't take away from your science in any way. So I thought it was nice. That was a question.
And I just saw this question too. So let me just add, I've had at least two women who have been in my lab who were really nicely turned out, and I looked at them with, I just thought this was so amazing, so happy to have had people like that. And they were also really fine scientists, So one of them actually ended up starting her own startup because that's what she wanted to do. And this is where I think resilience comes in. I don't know how many of you know this old song, Kuch to log kahenge, logon ko kaam hai kehna. No, people will say things. And I think this is where family matters a great deal. For us, somebody else says this, why are you taking it on board? Let's discuss this all the way through. Do we look down upon people who dress well and present themselves well, or choose to wear, pretty clothes? And the answer is, why does that matter just because you're a scientist? There are many ways to be a scientist. There are many ways, and appearance has nothing to do with what you do with your research or what you do with your training or what you do with your undergrad. And here's where I ignore these people. Have the courage to call them out on it if necessary. You don't have to be scared about this. You want to put on, you want to dress. I mean, just as we talk about in this context of sexual harassment, just because I dress a certain way does not, because I use makeup or, wear nice clothes, does not mean there's anything wrong with me, or nor does it indicate in any way. It's just fallacious reasoning. It's unbelievable. You should just point that out to people. Where is the reasoning in this?
Yeah, I know, and there's a slightly toxic version of this among especially high school girls, who sort of also, I've met more of them in the recent years than when I was in high school, which is that they sort of dumb themselves down a bit, even without realizing it. So they don't appear to be too smart to be attractive. So it's like you're intelligent or you're attractive. I mean, that's, it's a it's this thing taken to an end, and at a very sensitive age. And I think that's a fairly toxic sort of thing to have for a young girl growing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Sandhya, there's a direct question for you, which is, what would you advise an undergrad who aspires to become a neuroscientist as a woman in STEM? This is Pooja, who sort of joined us a bit late, and she was feeling sorry that she missed your part of the talk.
I didn't talk about that. Let me say, this is my pet pitch, okay? This is just a pet pitch, so take it forward.
Your video is again off, Sandhya. Yeah.
Okay. So my pet pitch is the following. I think you don't need to study biology in your high school, or you're really even in your undergrad. I think biology is one of those fields that welcomes people from other streams, and particularly neuroscience. So you can be a computer scientist, you can be other kinds of engineers, you can be a mathematician, you can be anything at all. I always think it's very important for any sort of biology you do, neuroscience or not, in this day, modern age, strong quantitative skills really help. So I would say that don't worry about it. Just follow your next steps. Make sure you have, exposure to good quantitative training along with whatever biology that you want to take. And just go forth one step after the next. You might find that you find more things than just neuroscience interesting. And, and as I always say, that find local internships and try things out, see if you like a particular field of research, or is it just that you like that research, or is there something else that you would like to do? But there isn't a set path
Great.
At all to becoming a neuroscientist.
Thank you, Sandhya. We're almost at time, but perhaps we can take one burning question if somebody wants to, unmute themselves and ask.
Soumya, there's also one nice question on the...
Did I miss it?
Yeah, go ahead. On the Facebook live thingy. And I think it's interesting. And the question says, there is in lots of STEM classrooms, ratio of men to women is skewed. And therefore, as women, we tend to be a little bit underconfident. Ultimately, that leads to this imposter syndrome. So any advice on that?
Yeah, please.
So, yeah.
Let Preeti answer this.
Sure.
Preeti,
okay.
You should answer it. You sort of said that you've faced this your entire career. So I think you should answer it, and I can add something later.
Sure. So I think, first of all, it's natural for us to, feel our difference. We are different. For me, the most stark thing is when I'm in a conference room and I ask a question, and I myself can feel how different my voice is compared to the 15 other men who are speaking over there. So and of course, the minute you ask a question with your female voice, everybody turns to you. So, you feel like you're really under the radar, that you have to be like 2 rungs better than them, just to even articulate whatever it is that you're thinking. I face this a lot. I sort of agree that this will grow if you let it fester, it will become imposter syndrome. I think for me, being very strong in my content always helps a lot, and that will help anyone. Any person who's a little bit shy can feel less shy, men or women, if their content is strong. Second is, more recently, what has helped is that I feel like I found my voice, and what am I passionate about? One of the things I'm obviously passionate about, and the reason I'm on this call, is that we need to have equitable workspaces, and our workspaces have to be made more inclusive for women. That's not going to happen for me if I keep shut. If I let my imposter syndrome sort of drive me, that's not going to happen for the future generation. So now that I've removed the problem and made it make it bigger or outside of me, I find that I can attack this better because it drives me to say, let's go after this. So that's what I want to say.
Great. Yes, Sandhya.
So a couple of quick things that I would suggest. So first of all, imposter syndrome, many people feel it. And in fact, I was in a recent talk by the principal scientific advisor of India, Professor Vijay Raghavan, highly decorated, and obviously, works at the highest level of government along with running a lab. And he talked about how he feels imposter syndrome. Okay? And so I think it's a reality for a lot of us. There isn't an easy solution. I would say there are 2 or 3 small things you can do when you're a minority, and I have been a minority as well in certain contexts, perhaps not as severely as Preeti in her context. 2 things. Just the love of science. So you try to remind yourself why you're there. And if you really love science, don't let anybody come in your way. Second, after the class or the talk is over, go up to the speaker and speak to them. Sometimes it's easier to ask your questions at that time. And something which I learned from a male collaborator of mine, in fact, I would say that the male collaborators in my life have taught me more. And in one of them especially has been so supportive, it's really helped. Would say, no, just be in this place. You don't have to do anything, because I barely drink alcohol. So networking of that nature is not something I, particularly do. But you say, no, just be here. And then, forcing yourself to be in some of these places, you just see who they are, human like you are. They are just like you. They have their good days, they have their bad days. And once you start seeing that, I think it becomes easier. Again, I would say there are certain hard boundaries. Please never accept harassment of any sort. Right. And please, as parents, give confidence to children for them to at least come and speak to you and to institutional mechanisms, if not directly to those individuals, but really also in those places. But I think just making sure you're part of that environment will reduce these barriers that you have. Don't take yourself out, because you might actually be even pleasantly surprised by how nice and welcoming after some time those environments will be, right? You just don't know. You have to give it a shot.
Lovely, lovely. I think I've not had such a good time in a long time. It's been such a pleasure to talk about this. And I remember when we were having our prep talk, I was telling Preeti that when I was in IIT, we were 6 girls in a class of 280. And she was telling me that the work is very much still undergoing and there are only 20% women on campus now. And I remember thinking and telling her that from being 6 girls in 280, 20% seems like a very steep climb. But then, as she very rightly pointed out, incidentally, we are 50% of the population. So 20% is not something to be, sort of satisfied with. I thought that was a very perceptive point.
But you will find that this difference actually, I mean, if you look at Bias Watch India, they have a website now.
Okay.
And I work in TIFR Mumbai campus. The number of female faculty is less than 10%. Okay. So this continues throughout. So in a sense that, even if you find particular spaces intimidating, don't take yourself out. This waterfall effect, which has been talked about in India, that after a PhD, so many women drop off. I think, hang in there, guys, put the one step in next in front of the other. I think you will find you can go very, very far. And as parents of girls, if you're here, or boys, learn to support the other people, because I think we need talented people in all walks of life, specifically things like science, which takes a really long time to make progress. And we need good people everywhere. We shouldn't take it lightly that highly trained people just drop out of the workforce because they find themselves being intimidated. So one step at a time, put yourself out there, try to find a good mentor. If you can't find them locally, there are many people that, especially social media can be a very affirming place. You find your little group, build a community for yourself, both in graduate school, as you go through your postdoc. find that community. Because of the internet, you're not limited to what is local. And I think this can then be a place where you can discuss your problems, just get ideas for your local problem and move forward. But don't take yourself out of the equation. I would say that just keep putting that one step in front of the other. Sometimes it seems extremely difficult, but you will find at the end of it all, it's extremely rewarding.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandhya and Preeti. That was lovely. And thanks, parents and participants, for joining us. And I'd just like to remind people of the courses and the other sessions coming up at GenWise in the next few weeks. Rajesh is here. Rajesh, would you like to share?
I've already shared. I think you can take 30 seconds to just take a look at it. We're already 10 minutes past 3 p.m.
Yeah.
So take your time. There are some interesting sessions coming up, including sessions that Radha is going to facilitate. There's a session on women Nobel laureates. So that promises to be interesting. There's a session by Ramji Walad that's starting a little later. Incidentally, Ramji, Radha, and Sandhya, I see Sandhya's name on this I Wonder magazine, which is also, the latest issue is on viruses. For those of you whose children are interested in science, I'd recommend that I'm just going to paste a link to this magazine. It's amazing. So please, this is targeted at teachers, but I guess interested parents and students can also have a look at it. Thanks so much, Sonia. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rajesh. Yeah, and there was one question about enabling children, I think it was about a boy and about failure. And, so next, on 7th, the next week, we have another Adda with Dr. Bhushan Shukla and Ramji Walad. And this is on enabling social emotional maturity in children. So that would be a good place to swing by. And please, you should register for that if that's your point of interest. Yeah. Yeah, so I think we are done for now, people. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we will close here. Sandhya and Preeti, maybe we can just debrief